Our speaker this evening is Dr. Mareena Snowden, Stanton Nuclear Security Fellow and trailblazing nuclear scientist. After earning a bachelor's degree in physics from Florida A&M University, Dr. Snowden continued in her pursuit of academic excellence and is now the first, ladies and gentlemen, the first African American to earn a doctorate from the Massachusetts Institute of Technology's Department of Nuclear Science and Engineering. Her research and history-making academic accomplishments have garnered national attention. Currently, her work as a fellow at the Carnegie Endowment of International Peace in Washington, D.C. includes research on nuclear arms control, verification, non-proliferation, and modernization issues. Prior to joining Carnegie, Dr. Snowden served as a National Nuclear Security Administration Graduate Fellow in the Office of Major Modernization Programs. This office is responsible for the modernization of warhead systems and ensuring access to the strategic materials used in the U.S. nuclear stockpile. In other words, please don't mess with Dr. Snowden. Dr. Snowden's impact upon the STEM field and her inspirational role in promoting diversity in science, especially for women, minorities, and youth, have been highlighted by such international platforms as Marvel Comics, CNBC, Essence Magazine, News One, Yahoo, The Root, and Blavity. Ladies and gentlemen, rattlers everywhere, friends, family, please give a FAMU round of applause and warm welcome back home to our speaker, Dr. Mareena Snowden.
Hello, hello, hello. Thank you so much for that warm introduction. President Larry Robinson, distinguished faculty and staff, parents, grandparents, family, and friends. Good evening and congratulations to the graduating class of 2018. I first want to start by thanking you all for inviting me to speak today. As was said, my name is Dr. Mareena Snowden. Some of you may know me, and some of you may not. I graduated from the FAMU Physics Department in 2011, and recently went on to become the first Black woman to graduate with a PhD in nuclear engineering from MIT. Thank you, thank you. I was invited to speak because of that accomplishment. But rather than just talk about myself, I thought it would be useful if we spent this time having a real conversation about the professional world you're stepping into tomorrow. My goal is to tell you the truth as I know it, a truth that will hopefully communicate how uniquely prepared you are as rattlers to win in this next chapter. I have 3 points to make, and since I know that I'm between you and your moment of glory, sashaying across this stage, I won't take up too much of your time. My first point is this: expect to be underestimated. The plain truth is that even in 2018, many people don't understand or support the importance of historically Black colleges. The non-enthusiasts typically fall somewhere between two extremes. Either you're ignorant to the contributions of schools like FAMU and therefore you cannot be interested, or you know full well why HBCUs were established and their long legacy of accomplishment, and you just don't care. Regardless of where the naysayers fall on this spectrum, it goes without saying that HBCUs have throughout history had to legitimize their experience and fight against narratives that try to minimize and discredit their accomplishments. As a graduate from this institution, this will likely be something that you will face as you climb the achievement ladder. whether wrapped subtly in questions like, oh, you went to school in Tallahassee? You mean Florida State? Or more overtly, there will be people who will try to characterize the training you've received here as less than. I made this my first point because this was the first negative experience I had as a graduate student at MIT, and the first one that caught me by surprise. After being accepted into the nuclear engineering program, I did what many incoming graduate students do. I traveled to Boston to tour the department, met with faculty, and hoped to find my future research advisor. During one such meeting, after what I thought was a good conversation about my undergraduate research at the Florida A&M Center for Plasma Science and Technology, this professor decided to end the meeting with what, in the best case, was supposed to be advice. So verbatim, he tells me, well, you know, your undergraduate institution didn't really prepare you to be here, so you should expect to struggle. Okay? I remember not knowing what to do with that sentence. In a situation that was supposed to be positive, me, an incoming graduate student looking to learn about research opportunities, I was challenged to legitimize myself, to defend what qualified me to compete at MIT. And I wish I could tell you that I checked that man. But the truth is, I didn't. Because as is so often the case, aggressions like this can feel like an ambush. And the nature of ambushes are to be unpredictable. So, what do you do when you find yourself in a situation, be it with a single person or a larger institution, that doesn't believe in your ability to contribute? The first thing you do is you remember that FAMU trained you for that exact moment. Underneath every experience that you've had on this, the highest of 7 hills, every class you took, every relationship you built, every set Friday where you danced your ass off was an affirmation. You know, was an affirmation. An affirmation that you are enough. An affirmation 131 years old that says that you are capable of making a space for yourself, in spite of attack, doubt, and attempts to sabotage your success. Neil deGrasse Tyson says that one of the beautiful things about science is that it's true whether you believe in it or not. And this is also true about your vision for yourself. It is a fact that after today, you will encounter people who will underestimate you based on all kinds of things: where you got your degree, your race, your gender, your class. But this fact is not nearly as important as how you conceptualize yourself. One of the most valuable things that you will take away from this undergraduate experience is your identity. The truths that you have been taught about what it means to be Black and brown in America, the richness of that legacy, and your agency in affecting the future. This is what you lean on when professors or coworkers or a random person on the internet tries to force you to legitimize yourself in a space. The training I received at FAMU prepared me not only to be a skilled researcher, but it also gave me the ability to distinguish constructive criticism from that which is based on biases against what I represent. You are leaving FAMU with the same ability, and if you exercise it, it will serve you well in the face of naysayers that dare to bet against the rattler. The second thing I want you to keep in mind as you step into the world tomorrow is that your ideas are valid right now. As a nuclear engineer, I hope you indulge me in a story that I think illustrates this point perfectly. In 1939, at the beginning of World War II, America was faced with an existential dilemma. It was brought to the attention of the president that Nazi Germany was pursuing a nuclear weapon. In a decision that would change the world order, America decided that it had to beat the Nazis to the punch and develop its own nuclear weapons program. And do you know who America turned to solve this most urgent and challenging question? A bunch of 25-year-olds. That's right. The average age of the scientists and engineers who designed the first nuclear weapon was 25 years old. I bet the average age of today's graduating class is around the same, especially if we include our more seasoned PhDs, around 25 years old. The point is, when it comes to America's most urgent and pressing questions, age is not what qualifies you. It is training and talent. There are questions we are facing today as a global community that have no easy answers, whether about nuclear weapons, criminal justice reform, or the effects of climate change. The innovations required to answer these questions are going to come from people who are willing to do more than just echo the ideas of previous generations. Today's problem solvers understand that their power comes not only from their technical training, but also in their ability to infuse their lived experience into the questions they ask and the conclusions that they draw. You are those problem solvers. You are graduating from FAMU with skills that are relevant to the problems we are facing today. But beyond your skills, you have a lived experience that allows you to look at these grand challenges with new eyes. You have the right, as incoming members of the professional class, to question the underlying assumptions of your fields, not only as a way of learning, but also as a check to ensure that the assumptions we use to build policy and solutions are appropriate to today's world. As Black and brown people, as queer people, as differently able people, you have perspectives that may differ from majority populations. And it is in these differences that the possibility for innovation resides. As someone who just recently stepped into my own professional career, I can attest to the fact that finding a way to infuse your lived experience into your work is not always the most obvious or direct process. As a nuclear engineer who works on nuclear weapons issues, it is tempting for me to accept the established frameworks as sufficient to explain the world as it is today. But so much has changed since those frameworks were first developed, meaning to me that conventional wisdoms are up for re-examination. And while I feel confident in the possibility of uncovering new approaches to securing peace in my own field, I offer this second point to you, understanding that doing so is the harder path. Like any new skill, the path toward developing original ideas that are informed by your lived experience will be clumsy and full of missteps. Remember that the expectation is not perfection, but a genuine curiosity and spirit of contribution. To paraphrase Chimamanda Ngozi Adichie, your ideas need only be informed, humane, and broad-minded. Before I move on, I want to offer one important caveat about the validity of your ideas. For anyone who, after today, finds themselves in professional spaces where you are the only or one of few with your identity, remember, particularly in these spaces, that your ideas are valid and should be sought out beyond conversations about diversity and inclusion. I once heard a senior scientist who happened to be Black say that he no longer accepted invitations to give lectures for Black History Month. At the time, I didn't understand why these invitations would ever be problematic. But upon closer inspection, his objection wasn't to the idea of giving lectures for Black History Month. His objection was to being asked to give lectures only for Black History Month. In situations where you are the only person of color or woman in a room, resist narratives that narrowly define the value of your ideas as being tied exclusively to your identity. Your ideas are valuable because you are highly trained, you are substantive, creative, and innovative, and that is why these institutions need you. The final point I want to leave you with is this: don't underestimate the power of your decisions. We are all familiar with the quote, life is 10% what happens to you and 90% how you react. Where I agree, I have found it difficult in a practical sense to know what the right response is in every situation. Particularly when thinking about the future, the uncertainty of how any one decision may play out in the long run has often complicated the process by introducing undue anxiety and stress. Looking back at my time at MIT, and more broadly at my 20s, I found it more helpful to focus on things that I can control as opposed to what I can't. Rather than looking 10 and 20 years down the line, walking through those hypothetical what-if scenarios, my strategy has been to break my future down into smaller, more digestible pieces, making sure that the decisions I make now are in line with the vision I have for myself 5 to 10 years down the line. And even with this strategy of taking life on its own terms and focusing on what I can control, life has a way of infusing uncertainty into every situation as a way of teaching a very specific lesson. My last year of graduate school is a good illustration of this point. What wasn't covered on CNBC or in the Shade Room was the fact that my graduation almost didn't happen. And in order to understand this part of the story, you have to take a step back and talk about what the PhD process actually is. At its core, the key expectation that distinguishes a PhD degree from a master's or a bachelor's is the expectation of original research, that you will spend your time answering a question that no one has answered before, a question for which there is no Wikipedia page or link on Google. To mark the fulfillment of this expectation, PhD students present their research in front of a committee of experts in what is called a defense. The defense is to PhD students what graduation is to you all today. It marks the end of an academic chapter. So there I was, in 2016, at the eve of my defense, after 5 years of research, with no more money left to pay for school, with all my family and friends in town, when the department head walks into my office and introduces an uncertainty that I had not seen coming. He said, because of a disagreement between my advisors about my research, they had decided not to let me defend. Zooming out on this experience, the lessons I think most relevant to you is the power of a single decision. Where the majority of our choices are small and inconsequential, there will be a few significant decisions that will chart the path for your life. These critical decisions require close, more careful consideration. It will require that you not only evaluate how you feel in the moment, but also how your decisions will move you closer or further from that vision that you have for yourself. Had I only considered my most immediate feelings, I would have walked away from MIT. I felt exhausted and fed up. I felt disrespected and misled. The problem with only considering your most immediate feelings, though, is that those feelings are often short-sighted and self-centered. This is why context must be considered, because it is only through considering the past and possible futures that a wise decision can be made. In considering the past, I knew that the strangeness of this situation was indeed not strange at all, that there had long been forces that have driven women and underrepresented minorities out of STEM, particularly at the higher professional stages. In considering the future, I thought of Raspberry Simpson, the newest Black PhD student in our department, who was looking to me as an example, as a data point for her own possibilities of success or failure. I knew that a moment like this, to prove our excellence on a stage as big as MIT, would likely never come my way again. And it was in the shadow of these considerations that I decided to stay and fight. I decided that by any means necessary meant exactly that. And it was ultimately that single decision that led me to speaking with you all here today. Tomorrow, you all are stepping into a new chapter in life, one that will require you to distinguish those smaller, insignificant choices from the more critical ones. Depending on how you frame it, not having a map or a formula sheet to tell you what the right next move is can be unnerving. But in the reality of the situation, you are well positioned to make the most out of this challenge. In your years at FAMU, You have developed a moral character and instinct that is capable of aligning your decisions with your vision. You have fostered relationships with your peers and professors that will help you bridge the gap when your confidence and resources lack. You have ideas that are valid and relevant to the issues we face today, but the key to it all is recognizing that truth and revealing it into the world. So, y'all know the end of my graduate story, but since we family, I'll let you into a sweet secret of how God deals with naysayers. On the day of my own doctoral hooding, when graduating PhDs received their hoods to signify their induction into the doctoral ranks, guess who had to give me my doctoral hood at commencement? The same man who told me that FAMU did not prepare me to be at MIT. The same man who told me that I would have to struggle, had to look me in my eye, had to shake my hand, and congratulate me on my accomplishment. So trust that God is making a place for you at the table. Trust. And whatever your definition of success is for your life, your achievement will be a testament to this unassailable truth. Don't you ever, never ever bet against a rattler. Thank you and congratulations.